So we move quickly on to the Quaife Radical Club Cup with Jonathan Wright, former champion, lining up on the front row of the grid alongside Darren Luke. Reigning champion Colin Miller is there in the red car on row 2. As the lights go out, it's a good start from both front row men. A terrible start by the look of things from James Abbott. He's going absolutely nowhere. The other car that didn't particularly get off the line well was Ray Woolhead. We lied on board with the car of James Breackell. He's in the midfield as the drivers approach the braking area at 14 for the first time. Darren Luke it is that leads, a new car for him this season, with Jonathan Wright in second place. He's also out in a new car this season. The field has fed their way through and onto the infield section of the circuit. The Radical Club Cup as popular as ever, catering for the SR3, the PR6 and the Radical Club Sport as well. There goes car number 39, Paul Marsham with one of our onboard cameras. He, at the moment, is having to fend off the attentions of car number 26, that being Mark Boot. So we ride on board with James Breackell up the inside, position gained for Nigel Place. Through he goes. James Breackell will want to try and hang on to the coattails of him and not lose another position all over the grass. And that looks like Tim Porter in the Radical Club Sport. He will find his way back onto the circuit, I'm sure, without too much trouble. As there goes Nigel Place, slowly feeding his way up through the order, although he's in danger of losing a place to one driver that had terrible problems in qualifying. That was Steve Burgess. Well, side by side goes Mark Boot and Darren Anley. Another position gained for Mark Boot. Darren Anley not having the best of qualifying sessions either, so he is very keen to try and gain a few positions. As we now ride on board with Paul Marsham, our second camera car that we've got in the field. He's riding at the very sharp end of this one, car number 31, directly ahead of him. Paul Marsham all over the grass and round the outside and eventually spinning into the gravel trap. That spells the end for our camera car. Paul Marsham, I think, just briefly touching the grass on the way into the corner, and that spells the end of the race for the Radical SR3. Mark Boot having a very busy race, number 26. That's the PR6 he's at the wheel of. It's the SR3 of Darren Anley directly behind him. As they feed their way through the slower traffic, the slower Radical Club Sport of Vincent Rosset moves out of the way. We ride on board once more with Paul Marsham. Let's have a look at what happened. He looks across to the left. He then looks back ahead at the back marker, and just that subtle loss of adhesion as he touched the grass was enough to put the car into a spin and ultimately into the gravel and out of the race. Well, on his final lap now is number 7, Darren Luke. He was without a win at all in 2009. We saw plenty of him on the podium, but never on the top step. It looks for the moment as though 2010 and round 1 of the Quaife Radical Club Cup is surely going to go his way. Out of Brook Corner, up onto the banking at turn 4 for the final time. The new Radical PR6 in the hands of Darren Luke, heads towards the start-finish line and takes the checkered flag. He will be delighted with that. We ride on board again with James Breackell. He is at the wheel of his PR6 as well, further down through the field. And as he heads in towards Brook for the final time, our race leader heads round on his slow-down lap, and highly delighted he looks. So Darren Luke takes round 1 of the 2010 Quaife Radical Club Cup from Jonathan Wright in second and Colin Miller in third. So we move on to our second Quaife Radical Club Cup race with Darren Luke and Jonathan Wright once more on the front row of the grid. Colin Miller and Stephen Lindsay on row 2 this time. And Darren Luke, fresh from that win earlier on, what can he do about making it the double this weekend here at Rockingham? The red lights come on, and when they head out, away we'll go racing once more. A long hold before the lights eventually go out. Lots of creeping through the field. And when the lights do eventually head out, it's a good start from the third row of the grid. From, I think that was Mark Abbott that got the rocket of a start. It certainly looks as though Darren Luke has managed to convert pole position to the early race lead. Once more, we're on board with James Breackell. He sits there just outside of the top 10 as the race leaders head to the braking area at 14 for the first time. It is still Jonathan Wright in second place, Darren Luke leading the race overall. There's the light blue number 2 car in the hands of Steve Burgess, the man from Nottingham. We ride on board with Paul Marsham, who didn't have the best of luck in the first race. He's got 53 directly ahead of him. That's Tim Porter in the Radical Club Sport. And of course, Paul Marsham is going to have to fight his way through the field. The grid for this race being decided from the finishing positions of the earlier one. There's a spin for Steve Burgess, the driver from Nottingham, who was a front runner last year. He rotates the SR3. That looks like Richard Carver has also gone off as well. The number 15 Radical makes its way back up onto the circuit. Here is Darren Anley. He tries to get up the inside of Mark Boot. We saw those two fighting away in the earlier race. Battle is resumed in this one. Once more they head down the School Straight with the Pro Sport still ahead of the SR3. Predominantly Suzuki-powered cars in this particular race. Of course, we do see the Club Sports further down through the field. They're powered by the 11 or 1200cc Kawasaki engine. The rest of the field has Suzuki power. Over the start-finish line they all come. Darren Luke still pressing on in the lead of the race. There's the red and Dayglow car just flashing through shot there. That's David Franklin, the long-time Radical racer. And there is number 27. That is Ray Woolhead. We ride on board once more with Paul Marsham. Somebody's slowing, heading round through turn one. All not well at the wheel of that Radical. No problems so far in this race, however, for Paul Marsham. Onto the brakes he goes. Sequential gearbox as well, of course, in these cars. And there is Nigel Place on number 6. He is down outside the top 10 at the moment. The car that was slowing was number 21, which is Paul McLaughlin. Saw Paul McLaughlin out for a fair chunk of last season, and certainly so far today in this race it's not going overly well. Well, there is our race leader. There's Jonathan Wright in second place, reigning champion, car number 1. Colin Miller, the man from Ballymena in Ireland, is there in third place. We've got a great battle still going on for 5th and 6th. Mark Boot and Darren Anley still fighting tooth and nail over those places. Car number 95, Richard Stables, just heading through shot as well. Paul Marsham's progress up through the field is continuing. Number 39, that camera car, and now just being passed by the recovering car of Steve Burgess. We saw his car having rotated through 180 degrees not many laps ago. He's fighting his way up through the order as Paul Marsham leaps over the curbs, and surely there was contact between the two of them there. Paul Marsham spins through 180 degrees, and it looks as though, with the rear wheel spinning and the engine still running, the car may have beached itself on the curbing. So problems in race 1 for poor old Paul Marsham. The curse of the camera car strikes in race 2 as well. Into the pits for Ray Woolhead, number 27. The Radical SR3 RS, looking as though it may take no further part in the race. And as a result of Paul Marsham's car being beached on the curbs, the safety car is indeed deployed. Shouldn't take the marshals too long to clear it up. You can see exactly how dangerous the position was where Paul Marshall came to rest. And we watch it once more. Steve Burgess on his right. Paul Marsham hits the curb on the inside, which throws the car to the outside. And unfortunately for Paul Marsham, it looks like it's 2 retirements out of 2 races this weekend. The safety car heads back in once more, so Darren Luke now accelerates towards the start-finish line, with Jonathan Wright chasing him down. Colin Miller under pressure in 3rd position. He's got Stephen Lindsay not that far away. James Breakel, who we ride on board with now, is there knocking on the door of a top 12 place. However, still trying to knock on the door of a 2nd win this weekend is Darren Luke. He leads the way round. Jonathan Wright, the 2008 Radical Club Cup champion, is chasing him all of the way. You can see just how busy the circuit is still. There's Rachel Davis, the sole lady we've got in the field, at the wheel of her new Ford 2010 SR3 presses on. Huge train of cars behind Mark Boot lining up. Number 74, James Abbott, driven Radical there, son of co-founder of Radical Sports Cars, Phil Abbott. He's having a good weekend so far this weekend, and he's putting Mark Boot under pressure as they fight for places. A spin, however, for James Abbott at Dean Corner. Just as he was trying to gain a place, he loses it. He tries to fire the car back into life, but he's lost a whole chunk of time as a result of that one. And therefore, it now looks like Nigel Place is having to fend off the attentions of the number 24 car of Chris Hillaby. James Abbott eventually gets the car pointing back round in the right direction away he's gone. There is Rachel Davis, the red number 5 SR3 once more. She's embroiled in a battle with, by the look of things, Mark Abbott. Up the inside goes Mark Abbott, gains a position. Rachel Davis, therefore, loses the place. As we ride on board again with James Breakel, clear track ahead of him. Into the braking area for Brook he comes. Through the left and right flicks, and then back up onto the bank section of the circuit at turn 4. Rachel Davis, number 5, is now being caught by the recovering Steve Burgess. We saw him spin earlier on in the race. Steve Burgess fighting his way back through the field, and he's looking to try and get himself up towards the top 10 if at all he can. Chris Hillaby fending off the attentions of Nigel Place, who equally as much is fending off the attentions of Richard Stables, car number 95. Those two side by side down towards Yentwood Corner. Great battling this for positions just outside of the top 10. Here comes our race leader, Darren Luke, number 7 it is that leads. Jonathan Wright there second, then the reigning champion, Colin Miller, with 4th place going away of Stephen Lindsay, and Darren Anley completing the top 5. There's the 6th place car of Mark Boot, and then eventually we get the gap with everybody queuing up to be 7th at the moment. It's Chris Hillaby that's there in 7th. However, he's got Nigel Place not that far away from him, and Mark Abbott adding to the mix number 2, Steve Burgess, and 5, Rachel Davis in the red car. And you can see just how tight it is from 7th, almost right the way back to 12th position. Side by side, Nigel Place is having to attack and defend. He's got Mark Abbott one side, he's got Chris Hillaby in the black SR3, number 24 the other. Chris Hillaby locks the brakes, makes contact with Nigel Place, spins him through 180 degrees. There's the view from James Breckell, our onboard camera car, of poor old Nigel Place in the PR6 facing the wrong way. Thankfully for Chris Hillaby, only just the lightest of damage to the front end of his car. He said it was getting tight for those positions. You can see just how tight it still remains despite the contact. The car ahead of us is Rachel Davis. We've seen her out in a Radical bi-Duro machine previously. She's changed to an SR3 for this year and is doing very well in her first races in it. Over the start-finish line they go. Mark Abbott ahead of Steve Burgess, and then Rachel Davis. Here's the replay. The locked brakes from Chris Hillaby as he realised he'd gone in a little bit too deep. Contact made with Nigel Place in the spin. So Darren Luke is heading towards a checkered flag. He's going to make it 2 out of 2 here in the Quaife Radical Club Cup at Rockingham this weekend. He will be highly delighted, not having taken a win throughout the whole of 2009. He's done the double this weekend. James Breckell in our camera car still fighting away with Rachel Davis currently. This is for 11th and 12th positions respectively through Brook Corner. Up onto the banking they come. It looks like Rachel Davis will just about hang on to it, but you can still see exactly how close it is for positions from 7th right the way to the very bottom of the top 12. Darren Luke claims his 2nd victory of the weekend, his 2nd victory of the season. Jonathan Wright comes through in 2nd position. The reigning champion, Colin Miller, is there in 3rd, with Stephen Lindsay, Darren Anley and Mark Boot completing the top 6.
Dan, congratulations, 2 out of 2 for the weekend. You must be absolutely chuffed.
Yeah, fantastic debut for the car, and yeah, nice with all the same equipment to be able to do the business, so really pleased with that.
And the guys behind you seem to keep the pace, but didn't seem to be much for trouble.
No, I was just trying to keep an eye on them, and if they were going a bit quicker, then go a bit quicker. But obviously the tyres are a bit shot now, so we were all struggling a bit, and just sort of keeping the gap. So I'd got enough not to be hassled and worried, but just enough to sort of see them, but not be too bothered. So that was fine. Really pleased with that.
Well, in the Quaife Radical Club Cup, the Super Sports class is being led by Colin Miller from Steve Burgess and Darren Anley. The Pro Sport class is being led by Darren Luke, and leading the Club Sports class is Andy Harwood.